So last year, as I mentioned, I taught a mandatory class on personal branding. And it was a 12-week class. And my students had, I saw them every day for 12 weeks for 45 minutes. And it was a mandatory class for every student in the high school that they had to take in order to graduate. So that's a blessing and a curse. I get to see all my students, but it doesn't mean that they all necessarily are super motivated to be there. So you really have to sell the class to the kids. And they really have to understand why it's important. And so it is important. I thought it's one of the most important classes, and it's so progressive and very unheard of that happened in a school that like I felt this huge obligation to do it justice. And so the essential question for my class was, how might we leverage social media and technology to tell compelling stories? So notice that it's really focused around storytelling, because ultimately a brand isn't just about, selling something. It's really about the way that you leverage your story to get your message across. And your story is what really, really, really is what you really want to be able to get out. And so kids are constantly telling stories. And I wanted them to understand like how they're telling stories. And on top of that, the class was a technology class. So I was really focused on teaching them skills around not just digital literacy skills, like of what tools are available, but I also wanted them to understand like the food. I'm going to explain the difference in a second. So the skills that we really focused on in the class were, were creation literacies, which I'll talk about a bit more in detail later on in this webinar. We looked at design principles, because ultimately like our kids are creating, but like, do they really know like in terms of creation literacy, like how to create something that looks beautiful, that's going to bring an audience to their work? Do they understand design principles, like the importance of white space in their design? Do they understand like less is more, visual breathing room? I'll talk a little bit about, so I would teach them design principles. We spoke a lot about how we communicate and basically the medium as the message. So like just because you have all these different media doesn't mean that it's always the right tool for the right job. So understanding your audience and understanding when the right media should be used and how to communicate it effectively. So having them understand those skills was really important. We spoke a lot about presentation polish, like how to make your presentations and how to present yourself in a really polished way so that it comes off as being super professional. We spoke a lot about networking and when to network and how to network more effectively online. So how to use social media, how to leverage hashtags, when to use the right media to get to the right audience, like how to follow a hashtag or connect with a college recruiter. We did like really stuff that very often is not taught. And I spent a lot of time teaching the kids how to do that. We'd look at organizing themselves and workflow from a digital perspective. And so that is really where the kids started learning fluency skills, because it's one thing to know how to use the tool, and that's the difference between fluency and literacy. When we look at digital fluency versus digital literacy is like, okay, I know how to use this tool. But fluency is when you become much more fluent and you understand how to use the tool in conjunction with other tools, or how to, my kid, like, and I'm sure you have the same issue with your students, like you'll have kids that know how to like turn on the computer, they know how to game, they know how to get on social media, but you ask them to like download a file and then upload it onto YouTube and they're like they don't necessarily know how to do that. Or you ask them like, okay, here's a problem, like you need to have, a picture in picture, and you want to be able to have that video go into another video, like those like kind of skills of like save it onto the camera roll and then insert it into this app, and like those like really like problem solving techniques are not often taught. And those students that know how to game and know how to socialize don't necessarily have the fluency understanding of how to use all the tools together. And those are skills that can be taught, but ultimately, like as educators, we have to think like, do we even have those skills? So those are kind of high level critical thinking skills that we're asking kids to learn. And those were a big part of what I focused on in teaching these skills. So why is teaching this important, and where did I begin? So I would start off the class at the very beginning of the year, and I'd ask my students this: what are the 3 top words that define you? And that was like, I got them brainstorming, thinking about, a lot of different things, but I wanted them to think about how they see themselves personally, and then how they're represented online. So, they would come up with different words. I would share words like, I want to be known as being really passionate. I want to be known, like when I think of words that define me, like I'm empathetic, I'm warm, like those are things that, like, those words I'd hope that would define me. But like, are those the words that define, like, that how other people see me, especially when they go online? Like, how does that come across? And so we talk a little bit about that. And the reason that I get them started about that is because I would teach them about the importance of like how they're going to be perceived, and how important it is to understand that even the smallest things that you post online could have really major consequences in your life. And I talk a little bit about, one example is I have them Google Samantha Goody. And I don't mean to put this poor girl in the spotlight again, but unfortunately her reality is this: like, this is a girl who was a college, I don't know if she was a freshman or sophomore in university, and she drank a little too much. She ended up in jail, and she tweeted this tweet. So just went to jail, hashtag YOLO. So as you can imagine, this tweet like went completely viral, and it kind of like, it destroyed her life. But like, when you Google Samantha Goody, like, unfortunately, like, you still find this about her. And I would say, like, if I was a high school principal, like, would I be able to hire her even if she was the best teacher in the world? Like, the reality is probably not, right? Like, if she, like, maybe she could turn the story around, and I do believe that that's possible. But like, in the short term, like, this is something that like could have been avoided. And so I asked the kids, like, are these the words that define Samantha Goody? Right? Like, do you think that she would see herself as this person who like was, just went to jail? Like, I don't even know what words we would look at, but like, those are not who she is as a person. She's probably a lot deeper as a human being, but unfortunately, like, that is how she's now seen. And so I want the kids to understand, like, ultimately, like, whatever we post online is not private. Like, we have to understand that this is not like the diary under our bed. Like, this is the diary under everyone's bed. And like, even though our students are doing a lot of online like creation, and they're on Snapchat, and they think that it's, that's like a separate space from the reality of their world, like, nothing is ever private. And so you really have to be aware of the things that you post. And I know we've been saying this for like a decade, but the reality is, like, kids are still, they need to hear it. They still need to be taught. They still need to hear this. Like, it's not, they don't understand this. Like, my 11-year-old daughter still needs to be taught this. Like, every year we still need to have these conversations with kids. But what we want to do is not scare the hell out of them. We want to be able to show them like positive examples of that as well. So like, I then have them Google Beverly Fam. And guys, like, if you're teaching high school, this is even middle school, I don't know about like the YOLO Samantha Goody, but like, Beverly Fam is such a great example of like a positive, person who's like leveraging social media. So this is an actual tweet. David Terrio, who was her English teacher in Huntington Beach, California, is actually a friend of mine. That's how I knew about this. And she tweeted this. This was a few years ago. And she wrote like, English homework, make a creative resume. Me, hashtag try too hard. Okay. So she designs this like crazy, amazing resume. And she clearly has like digital skills. So like, you start looking through like the feed, and it says, great work. Any tips for my students? And then she writes, just be creative and you'll be noticed. Case in point, this video I made that got me noticed by some very important people. So I'm going to actually just play it for a second.
My mailbox is empty every single day, not an acceptance to be seen. My dream school is USC, but I guess it's not for me. All of my life I've dreamed of cardinal and gold. I sent my comment app in, heaven knows I tried. Don't get those B's, don't get those C's, get a high score on the SAT. Prevail, don't fail, don't go to jail, or say bye to Yale. They said no, don't have space for you anymore. They said no, then again I'm way too poor. No job yet, so I'll be drowning in student debt. It's better off this way. Rejections never bothered me anyway. It's funny how some people have less than stellar scores, but they still got into Harvard. Guess GPA weighs more, but there are still some things to do. Play sports, work at soup kitchens too. Personal statements you thought you killed until they said no, we can't just let you in. They said no, got that letter and it's thin. 60K tuition I can't take. It's better off this way. I guess it's time to face the second crazy round. Appeals or transfers, there are tons of options all around. But I might find I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'll fit right in with the pack, forget what they said to me. They said no, but I'll rise like the break of dawn. They said no, but my chances aren't all gone. Here I stand in the light of day. I'll just fight on. Rejections never bothered me anyway.
She applied to all these colleges but wasn't getting accepted, and she was still a good student, but her grades weren't really showing that. And so she ended up creating this parody, and she tweeted it out, and she I guess she connected her tweet with the colleges and the programs that she was trying to get in, even though she had been rejected already. And in the end, her tweets got so much traction, and they were so impressed at the school of her choice, which was USC, and it was a school of journalism, that she actually ended up getting accepted into her school of choice. So I show this to students because how incredible, what an incredible experience that she was able to take matters into her own hands and leverage her strengths, which were digital media and digital creation. And she was super creative and understand really that ecosystem, the digital ecosystem. And she was able to then leverage that and be crafty and get into school, and to get into the school of her choice for that matter. And I thought, wow, when you understand how to use the media in a positive way, there's all these kinds of opportunities that can open up doors. And I will say to the kids this, I didn't actually apply to be an education evangelist at Adobe. I was recruited, and part of the reason I got the job was because I'm savvy and I understand how to use social media, and I'm connected, and I'm a networker. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but those skills are really important for all of us to learn. And so that's a lot of the conversations that I was having with kids, but ultimately kids have to learn how to do this and how to create and how to get media out. And that's a big, important skill that very often we overlook. We spend a lot of time getting kids to write, which is of course super important, of course, and we get them to read, and of course it's super important. But like in 2020, when we think of like the media that is really important in our lives, a lot of that requires your ability to network, to create content, to create video content, to create visual content, to be able to create aesthetics and design things. Like those skills are actually really important and very often overlooked. And I'm not just saying you have to be a media teacher to do this. Like those skills should be applicable to all classes when kids are creating content. And those are things that we often just like put to the side and we don't teach.